Hello, welcome to Culturally Illiterate. I said that way too loud, a podcast where four longtime friends watch through every theatrically released Marvel and DC movie in order and grasp at straws as to why we decided to do this. I am one of your hosts, Jake. I am allergic to cats, and with me as always are my co-hosts.
I'm Jason, and I am allergic to certain metals, such as the ones they use in U.S. currency, the coins.
That's what currency means, yeah.
No, but not paper money.
Yeah, but I feel like that's implied because you said metal.
You don't know what I do.
My name is Matt. I used to be allergic to dogs and cats, but then I was really stubborn on my love for dogs and cats, so I petted them anyway, and every time I did, it was suffering after that. But eventually, I built up resistance, so now I have a cat at home who I don't react to, or get itchy eyes, or sneeze up a storm.
Matt picked himself up by his bootstraps and stopped being a little pussy bitch.
Actually, ironically, he started being one.
Yeah, he started being.
Oh, that is true. He's a pussy bitch now.
Alright, and I am another of the co-hosts, Sean, and I am allergic to living, apparently.
Sean has a broken ass.
I have a broken ass.
Yeah, we'll let him get into however much or however little detail he wants to get into.
I have a broken ass. That's all they need to know.
To be honest, this is the first episode that I was sort of dreading. I know if you've watched the previous ones, the only movie I didn't really like was Superman and the Mole Man, but even that, it's like pretty brief, under an hour, and it's like not that bad, and there's sort of something of the time that's like sort of interesting about it, just to like see what it was. This was the first one.
This Shrek movie fucking sucks.
I'm really trying hard here to think of like a story from the last week since we last recorded, or like something cool to recommend.
You don't have anything to
delay
recommend?
Going into this? Well, I'm gonna recommend. First of all, I'm going to real quick stop beating around the bush. We're talking about 1982's Swamp Thing. And I will recommend, but I want to plug it later, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run. But I don't want to get into that before we've at least talked about the Swamp Thing movie. But yeah, I'm like really pulling. I mean, I guess we just saw Men. Men was really good. I know people are kind of mixed on that, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. It just worked for me. I get that it was a little heavy-handed for some people, or a little bit tropey. I saw some people say it kind of had like male feminist Where's My Hug vibes being written and directed by a man, and I kind of get that, but I don't know and I won't comment on that, especially in regards to women saying that, because I don't fucking get to have a say on if it comes across that way or not. But just for me, the movie worked. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to jump into as much as I wish I did. So please, if one of you guys do.
Listen, this is great. You opened the door for me. So
I do this every week. You can always jump in with it.
No, I know, but listen, we're gonna need a lot of filler on this.
I mean,
episode. We are. This movie sucked, and there's not much to say about it. So we need some filler. So anybody and everybody, the new Ericdoa album, Things with Wings, just came. I mean, as you're hearing this, it's been out for a while, but it came out last week as we're recording this, and I think it's a phenomenal album. Ericdoa is he's typically like a hyperpop artist, but I think this album's his most like diverse in sound, I feel like, of all of his project. There's some songs that are super hyper poppy, there's some songs that are just straight up like dancey pop music, there's some ones that are more like rock oriented. I think it's his most well put together project. Feels cohesive, and I don't know, I feel like he feels very comfortable with his voice and making music in this project, and I thought it went really well. And specifically the song Cheap Liquor is the song that I'm going to recommend. I think that's the best song on the album. I actually saw Ericdoa a couple weeks ago at this point when Jake had COVID, whenever that was. And he put on a great show. He played a few unreleased tracks from this new album, Things with Wings, that hadn't come out yet, and they were all really good, one of them being Cheap Liquor, which is my favorite, and I knew I was going to love it when I heard it live. He put on a very good performance, especially considering the fact that he was losing his voice, and as he put it, everything for the past 48 hours felt like it was trying to kill him, and yeah, so he's just really sick, and I think people should check that out. A lot of hyperpop is like this, but this album really, like, I was thinking about it a lot listening to it, like, there's so many moments where he's talking about, like, really, like, personal issues like toxic relationships, alcohol abuse, like personal things, but it's so dancey and fun that like you hear him talking about like horrible things happening in his life and you just want to like groove and bob your head. And then there's also like the closeout track Dear Mama, which is like a very emotional like ballad type thing. And that's a great song as well. It showcased his singing ability very well, I think. How far he's come in that.
Nice. Well, I'm glad somebody had something because Oh, Matt, you could just talk, man. You don't gotta raise your hand.
I want to talk about. It's not really a recommendation, but it's something really cool to check out.
So a recommendation.
Okay, that's true.
It's not a recommendation. I'm just recommending that you check it out.
Like it's not like a thing that has released yet. That's the thing.
Shit, by the time this comes out, it may have.
Oh, maybe. I doubt it though, because there's this new movie coming out called Winnie the Pooh: Blood and Honey. It just released. They just released screenshots of it. There's not even an official trailer yet. Shout outs to the public domain because stuff like this only happens when things go to the public domain, and it's really cool to see right as it went to the public domain, someone's like, I'm gonna make a horror movie based on Winnie the Pooh. And I don't know, like, I'm just really looking forward to it. I'm really ready to have all of my childhood memories ruined by seeing Winnie the Pooh murder somebody, and it's gonna be really cool.
I think like it's interesting because like Winnie the Pooh, like obviously it's a children's story of Winnie the Pooh.
Correct.
But like I think like it does in concept lend itself to a horror movie well in a sense. Cause it's kind of like a creepy thing. Like he's just this bear living in the woods with like this weird kid. You know what I mean? Kind of took a child and we're like, we're your friends now.
Well, it gives me like Willy's Wonderland vibes, and if it's anything like on that level, I'm going to enjoy it.
Dude, there's a wreck right there. Willy's Wonderland.
You have to be a Nicolas Cage enjoyer to enjoy that movie. Otherwise, you won't get anything out of it. But I think I'm a cultured human being, so I do enjoy Nicolas Cage. So I do recommend it. It's for all you fellow well-cultured beings.
Damn straight. I mean, we're kind of in the middle of a Nicolas Cage renaissance right now. I mean, some people will tell you never really went away, but I think if you have like, I actually haven't watched Mandy. I need to watch Mandy, but like you kind of had that moment where people are like, oh shit, Nicolas Cage is making good movies, and then between like some fun B movies like Willy's Wonderland and then the masterpiece that is Pig. It's not like incredible, but I'm like, I think Unbearable Weight's like a solid fun comedy, even if it's nothing revolutionary. He's got a can't remember who's making it. I'm feeling like an idiot now. But the Nicolas Cage Dracula movie that's coming out, very excited for that. The set pics look very interesting. Let me pull it up because off the top of my head, I'm a fucking Philistine and don't remember who's making it. But yeah, if you Google Matt, like Google image right now, like Nicolas Cage Dracula movie, and you'll see pictures of him as Dracula. Jason, did you look it up?
You should Google Nicolas Cage Dracula because he looks like
Renfield. That's the name of the movie.
Renfield?
Renfield is the name of the movie. Being directed by Chris McKay, starring Nicolas Cage as Dracula. Ben Schwartz is also in it. Awkwafina,
Ben Schwartz?
Awkwafina, Nicholas Hoult.
That's another wreck.
Brandon Scott Jones.
Ben Schwartz and his improv skills are incredible. Middleditch and Schwartz with him and Thomas Middleditch on Netflix. They have like 3 improv specials that are all very funny. I love Ben Schwartz.
I love you.
He looks like his Sweeney Todd was like a pimp with the red outfit.
All right, well now I need to look it up. God damn it.
Oh yeah, that looks sick.
Chris McKay directed Lego Batman. He also directed Tomorrow War, which I did not watch because it looked dreadfully boring and I did not hear particularly good things about it. But he directed Lego Batman and he was involved with like the other Lego movies. So, you know, he's got these, you know, movie-wise, I believe the only 2 like feature films he did were Lego Batman and Tomorrow War, so kind of a mixed bag in terms of feature film directing, but
I've never heard of Tomorrow War in my life.
It was an Amazon Prime movie starring Chris Pratt.
Yeah, okay, now I know what you're talking about.
Which tells you everything you need to know.
I saw so many ads for that and never watched it.
Yeah, it looked awful.
I remember seeing that, like, that ad was everywhere for a while, and I just remember seeing it all the time and being like, this looks like one of the worst movies.
I'm pretty sure we saw it a fair amount when we were in New York.
Oh yeah, and there was shit all over New York Comic Con for it, promoting the hell out of it, and I don't think anyone watched that shit. I mean, I could be wrong, maybe it was a fucking smash hit for them, but that looked like the most generic possible movie.
Yeah, that looked like dog shit.
Chris Pratt, unless it's Star-Lord, like, I just can't be fucked to care. And I'm not even, like, super hardcore anti-Chris Pratt. like, I'm not necessarily even in that crowd, but I just think just purely, like, from as an actor, he's just not interesting.
And it's also got, like, with Chris Pratt, it's at a point of, like, oversaturation of, like, I see his fucking face too much that he just pisses me off.
Parks and Rec became so popular after it went on Netflix, and then the Guardians movies came out, and he became so huge, and, like, just immediately they were like, oh, so let's put him in everything, and it hasn't stopped, even though people don't. It's one of, like, it's just, he's just not interesting. He does one thing, and he does it well enough, and I, like, enjoy him in the Guardians movies, and he also, he's good as, what's his name, Owen in the Lego movie.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't actually seen Lego Movie Part 2, I need to watch that, but it's just, he's
no, the name's definitely not Owen.
It's definitely Owen. We're gonna look it up right now.
It's something Emmett.
It's Emmett. There we go. Yeah,
Oh,
that's it,
you're right. It's Emmett. I'm a fool.
Yeah, but that's the thing though. Is like Emmett is also another character that like fits like Chris Pratt's like profile as an actor.
Bland and
like he plays like
bland, one note kind of.
Yeah, very cheery for everybody.
Yeah, audience like universal white man dumb white man stand-in is what Chris Pratt does, and he does it well. But it's just not interesting. He doesn't have range.
I don't need to see it
not
constantly.
Not that we've seen. And again, maybe it's a little harsh because there's some nice emotional beats in the Guardians movies with like Yondu's death and all that. But yeah, I mean, Chris Pratt to me is just like the definition of mid when it comes to like being like an actor, and he's almost just more celebrity than actor.
Listen, as great as he is as Star-Lord, it pains me that Glenn Howerton was up for that role and didn't get it. I think that would have been better. I'm just gonna say.
I'd be curious to see, if anything, just to see some takes of like what he would have done.
I think Glenn Howerton is probably one of the funniest people ever.
I'm all aboard. Again, it's quite possible we know who's playing main timeline MCU Mr. Fantastic by the time this comes out. I don't know, but I'm still all aboard Glenn Howerton. I don't like the fan cast too much. It just feels pointless, and most fan casts suck. But that's one that just resonates with me. And mostly because I just want to see Glenn Howerton in more Not Always Sunny stuff.
He's so fucking funny. I love him.
He's a golden guy.
He's a golden. He's just, Charlie used to be my favorite character on Always Sunny. More and more, I realize that Dennis is just such an important part of that show.
So again, we're covering Swamp Thing, which released February 19th, 1982, written and directed by Wes Craven, and you may be thinking, a Swamp Thing movie made by Wes Craven? That's gotta fucking go so hard. No, you're wrong. It doesn't. Here's how bad it is. It's available for free on the internet. You can watch it on Tubi with ad support, though it doesn't stop your ad blocker, or it's entirely on YouTube for free legally. So, that should tell you all you need to know. Shot by Robbie Greenberg and Gregory Unsworth. Sorry, no, I think that's left over from last week's notes. Shot by Robbie Greenberg. And I also want to mention, for reasons we'll get into, Jason, what the fuck did you drop?
My headphones again.
Okay, I was like, is it your mic?
He dropped his mic.
But yeah, for reasons we'll get into, I wanted to note that it is edited by Richard Bracken. The movie stars Adrienne Barbeau as Alice Cable, Ray Wise as Alec Holland, with the name of the century, Dick DeRock, as Swamp Thing, and Louis Jordan as the villain Arcane. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I just want to reconfirm, I'm the only person who had seen this movie before today.
You're the only reason I know it exists.
It's such a shame that Dick DeRock plays the only character that doesn't have a penis.
That we know of.
Hey!
Does anyone, so given that nobody has really prior experience with the movie, maybe if any of you have anything to say about why you're so let down given your experience with Wes Craven or your experience with the Swamp Thing character?
I have two takes on this. Fuck you, Jason, I'm cutting in.
That's fine.
I saw you open your mouth. It hurts me on two levels because it's like, one, I would say like, I didn't really read much of Swamp Thing prior to like the TV show that came out fairly recently in like, was it 2019 that it came out?
Yeah, I believe 2019 was this one thing. Way too short-lived, absolutely fantastic. Highly also recommend that instead of this Swamp Thing show.
Which was fantastic. I loved every second of it, and like, it's still a crime that thing got canceled. But like, so it's just to see like this on such like a, I shouldn't say that it's bad that it was on a cheaper level, but it feels cheap. Like, it doesn't feel like enough heart and soul was put into certain parts of it. If anything, I'd have to say, like, the practical effects are some of the things where they actually put some heart and soul into it, but otherwise it feels like it kind of, like, threw in the towel a little bit. And then in the second set of it is that like this is a Wes Craven movie, and this is apparently like his 4th or 5th movie like that he worked on, and everything prior to this except for one of them,
The Hills Have Eyes?
yeah, I think it was The Hills Have Eyes, were critically panned, and this one was kind of critically mid.
Yeah, this movie does have a bit of a cult following, so I mean, if you're sort of interested, by all means, check it out. There's some people who like it, some people who like it's part of their childhood, but
I think it depends on like your level of camp and what you like out of that, because this seems to heavily be based around like being campy, and it's really a situation of like, does it hit with you or does it not? Do like certain parts, are they too campy or are they too stupid, or are they like, do they go too far, or is it like, this is pretty funny? Whereas I don't think if I watched it alone, I probably wouldn't have cared for any of it. So yeah, it shocks me that it's like, this is a Wes Craven movie where he directed it and he wrote it, and like it turned out the way it did. Because it's like directly after this he made Nightmare on Elm Street, which is like such a turn.
Like, it's seemingly so right up his alley of like this weird swamp beast that just like, you know what I'm like, that seems like that's so clearly up like in his wheelhouse that he can knock out of the park. Like, he's made movies with like weird creatures, namely one of my favorite movies ever, The People Under the Stairs, where there's these weird inbred freaks in the basement, and also Mommy and Daddy are in that movie. So
they're the real the weird the kids and the people under the stairs are the I don't want to spoil it, but they're not exactly the real antagonists of the
correct film. But my point is just that like it seems like something that Wes Craven would just fucking completely blow away, you know? And he just didn't at all.
I wonder if it would have gone better if it was later in Wes Craven's career, so he was a little bit more developed as a filmmaker, as well as further down the line of Swamp Thing's existence, so that character was better defined. And so it of note is Alan Moore's seminal character-defining Swamp Thing run had not come out yet, so there's a lot of traits that aren't there. So if like the character had been more well-defined and he had been more defined as a filmmaker, if this would have gone better. Yeah, I mean, this one's kind of rough, and it's just not very entertaining either. It's kind of boring.
It's very boring. The first third of the movie is just a bunch of build-up, although I say build-up in quotations because it goes at, it's not even a snail. What's slower than a snail? Wherever the creature is, it goes at that creature's pace. Pace.
It feels so much longer than its hour and
Exactly.
a half runtime.
Honestly, it was really boring. If Sean and Jason didn't continuously yell "fuck me" while Swamp Thing and the love interest were together, I probably would not have survived watching this film.
Yeah, I decided that every scene where Swamp Thing is silently with Alice Cable, it would be way funnier if he was just going "fuck me, fuck me, fuck me."
Which became so much more funnier because everything about the movie was so miserable that just became deliriously
It's
funny.
just so funny to imagine her like looking at him longingly, and he's just sitting there like fuck me, fuck me, fuck me.
And it's even funnier because he doesn't have a penis.
Matt's really lingering on that. So he doesn't have a Swamp Thing. All right, running through the plot real quick. I mean, and just to say, I'm a big fan of the Swamp Thing character. But yeah, the good things I can say about this are few and far between. So yeah, going through the plot, after a scientist is mysteriously killed while assisting a top-secret bioengineering project, government worker Alice Cable arrives at the bogs to serve as his replacement. Alice immediately notices that one of the team's swamp sensors has malfunctioned. I'm yawning just reading this plot summary. Harry Ritter reveals that her predecessor was attempting to repair it when he was killed. Charlie tells Ritter a rumor about an evil paramilitary leader named Anton Arcane who intends to hijack their operation. Alice introduces herself to Dr. Linda Holland and her brother, lead scientist, Dr. Alec Holland, who takes her on a tour and encourages her to admire the beauty of the swamps. After noting the disappearance of one of their workers, the group hears a loud bang and returns to the laboratory where Linda shows off her recent breakthrough, a glowing plant-based concoction with explosive properties, seemingly arbitrary explosive properties.
Yeah, that thing was so dumb.
Plot-driven, sometimes it explodes, sometimes it doesn't, depending on what needs to happen, explosive properties.
If it touches my hand, it doesn't explode. If I throw it on the floor, it will explode.
No matter what floor of the material. Wood, yes. Metal, yes. Skin, no.
Cups,
But
no.
Cups, no. You seem to be able to drink
But
it.
skin, yes, when it gets on to Alec.
Well, I think that was mostly just like shit was already on fire, though. I do want to get.
I think it was just because it like fell on the floor and he also fell, so it exploded.
Let
and
me
then
shit
he was
on
just
this
on
movie,
the
alright?
explosion.
Fuck you.
Well, there's gonna be plenty of shitting on this movie.
Fuck
Don't
me.
you worry.
Fuck me.
So sometime later, Alec notices that droplets of Linda's formula spawned rapid plant growth on the surfaces they touched. Suddenly, a group of paramilitary agents attacks and raids Alec's laboratory. A man resembling Ritter steps forward and pulls off his mask, Mission Impossible style, and reveals himself as Arcane. You know, there's nothing like a moment when a character you've barely met reveals himself to actually be a character you've never met.
You know, that was fucking because it's like I've taken off my face. All right, who are
Who
you?
is this man?
And they've talked about the rumors of Arcane, this like supposed Arcane, but it's still just like
He also mentions when he's walked in, he's like, you probably know my name, but you've never seen me before, and it's like, why'd you need a disguise then?
And he doesn't have like it's not like he has like a big like there's nothing like jarring about his face.
He's
He
just
just
a
kind
guy.
of looks like a mustache twirly villain, so it's not like it's like jarring.
I mean, the most noticeable thing he had was an accent, and that was like it. So it was like, okay, if you just hide your accent, I don't think I'd be able to tell who you are since we don't have photos of
Well,
you.
the guy he was
anyways.
disguised that had an accent too, right? And he was able to do it. So like,
Mate, I don't even know.
I think the guy he was disguised as just had a regular American
I thought it was like
accent.
more British.
I may be wrong because I can't remember for the fucking life of me. But when he took off the mask, he had like a German
That's
accent.
my issue. Is that like so? Like Matt mentioned that it moved slower than a snail's pace, but I do feel like the first like 20 to 30 minutes move so quick in the sense that like you just kind of meet the characters and then they're just like, all right, here's the inciting incident here, like, and you barely meet the characters. It's like,
But it,
this,
Jason, you have to remember, it took them 30 minutes for them to get to him becoming Swamp
but it's
Thing.
just like, but not there was no development in that 30 minutes. It went from introducing the characters to he's Swamp.
Yeah, exactly why it took forever is because you when they first like, you know, in the first scene they're just on a helicopter and you see Discount Rambo like ordering soldiers around and you're just like, what the fuck is happening? And then they don't explain any of this until like
No part of this movie made sense.
exactly like until like 30 minutes in that you understand like what's going on. And they even know there was like a major threat.
It's like, why am I supposed to care about these characters or understand these characters at all when you've given me nothing?
I think the essential thing to Jason's point about the pacing is like you have like barely any interaction between Alec Holland and Alice Cable, and then they kiss.
Right.
Like they discover the plant growth, and then they kiss, and there's absolutely no chemistry between Adrian Barbeau and Ray Wise. There's just none at all. There's really not any memorable performances in general in this. I think the closest, like Dick DeRock's fine in the Swamp Thing suit, and Louis Jordan's maybe sort of almost interesting as like a very I don't want to say over the top, but like it's almost everything. Like, it feels like a poor attempt at, like Sean talked about camp earlier, but there's really not a lot of camp there. It's very fleeting at most, and it just feels like you gave someone like a one sentence definition of camp and then had them try to make a 90-minute movie with that tone. But yeah, they kiss right, like there's barely like they come in, it almost does both things at once.
Yeah.
Where like you meet the characters and the attack happens and then they kiss and then the attack happens, blah. But at the same time, it takes 30 minutes for Swamp Thing to appear in a 90-minute movie. And it's all bad. It's just bad.
It's just a bad movie.
I you know, like I said, like I don't know that we're gonna have that many insightful comments on
Just
this one.
sucks.
I don't think there's anything to make a
the
The
comment.
only
Yes.
thing that's worth commenting is that the formula they make, when they like throw it at something, it explodes, and then from that explosion a plant grows, but like it makes explosions, so like how does something grow from that? And then like what? And yeah, exactly, science. And then wherever the guy's name was, whoever was Swamp Thing, he like tries to tries to run away with the formula, but then trips over himself, and supposedly the formula got on him, but like I think I saw it go over him, so like none of it got on him. But no, it got on him.
No, it landed near him and it exploded, and it exploded
Here comes
over
like
him. And
the
he caught on
the
fire.
only highlight of the entire movie, but they somehow made it like very tame compared to any other movie. Like he was on fire, so he was running out, right? And the flames just grew and grew and grew, and then he fell into the creek, and then like more explosions were happening. There was like no excitement from like camera angles, character reactions, none of it. You just kind of see this guy on fire. Everyone, it just gives like a, oh wait, I forgot, I can't do that in the audio only podcast. Everyone gives like a reaction to it, and like this dude's on fucking fire, and he's like, I don't know, it's so boring. Even like exciting things like a guy on fire is boring. Just go on to the second act.
Believe it or not, I'm not even to the point where he's Swamp Thing yet. So after he reveals himself to be Arcane, Kane shoots Linda for attempting to escape with the formula. Alec grabs the beaker but trips, as Matt mentioned, causing spilled chemicals to set him on fire. He runs outside, dives into the swamp to extinguish the flames as a series of explosions burst from the water. Apparently it exploded in water too, I guess. Overnight, Arcane's henchmen destroy the premises and remove all evidence of the team's work. At dawn, a henchman captures Alice and attempts to drown her in the swamp, but a green, human-like creature rescues her. Meanwhile, in his mansion, Arcane and his secretary realize that Alec's most recent notebook is missing. Alice runs to a nearby gas station to telephone her employees for help. The operator connects her to Ritter, who claims to have been called away for the site before attack, but is actually Arcane. After realizing she stole Alec's last notebook, Alice waits for Ritter's return alongside the young gas station attendant Jude. I could have sworn his name was Reggie.
You told me this whole time I was talking about how much I love Reggie.
Yeah, I swear to God, maybe the actor's name is Reggie. That's neither here nor there, but I really, for some reason, was under the impression
Jude
that
was the only character I cared about.
So she's hanging around with Jude, but Arcade's men arrive and chase her through the forest. Suddenly, the Swamp Thing appears, and scares the pursuers away as Alice escapes. So that's all that happens leading up to Swamp Thing's first appearance, which is one of the few things I'll give it. I think with the limited budget and the time period, I think the Swamp Thing suit is respectable. It's nothing like groundbreaking, but I don't really have an issue with it. Yeah, sorry, Reggie Batt is the actor who plays Jude, so credit to him.
Well, Reggie was still pretty good. I loved him. Yeah, I think I don't love the rubber suit, but like I can still get with the practical effects of the time that they had. Like, I mean, I think it looks good when he's like standing still. I know to me it just looks weird because it's man in a rubber suit, and it's like there are times when it's easier to get by because of like you look at a Godzilla suit and yeah, that looks kind of like it looks fine when it moves because it's like made that way so that like you don't really see those imperfections looking at it when it moves, but you can see that like this is a man in a rubber suit when he moves, which is the only thing that I'm like about. They don't really try to like find ways to hide like the parts where like the creases are when he moves with his legs or anything like that, which I feel like they could have hidden if they just like threw some plants.
One of the things I'm going to say is I also think the setting of the movie, which is probably my biggest issue with it, doesn't help your case because the whole movie is set in broad daylight, which is really weird for like a sort of horror tinted movie set in a swamp. And like the swamp as a whole, it's super open, unobstructed. The waters seem consistently shallow, and there's whole plains when there's just like no trees around at points, and it's always broad daylight inconsistently. Sometimes it's even brighter than others. It goes back and forth, and all the lack of obstruction in broad daylight doesn't help you. A, it hurts the tone, the vibe, and the atmosphere of the movie, and then B, you could have also used that to your advantage to hide issues with the suit.
I also realized they mentioned alligators a lot.
Yeah, good point. Kind of a Chekhov's gun missed opportunity.
The thing is that not only is it set in broad daylight, but like as I was watching them explore the swamp, they're talking about, oh, don't careful here, there's an alligator here, right? I didn't think of it as dangerous. I didn't think of it as like, oh, ew, a swamp. I'm just thinking that would be a nice place for me and the gang to just go and canoe and just have a nice time. Like there was okay, never mind. I was about to go, like skip like way ahead, so I'm just gonna pause myself for now.
Yeah, I mean it's an ugly movie. The costumes are bad. It feels like all the costume budget just went into the decent Swamp Thing suit. The setting is bad. The lighting's not correct for really the vibe at all. It's not even particularly like good. I mean, it's not like piss poor lighting, but it's not like it like stands out.
The one good thing I could say is that some shots where like they're like trying to like keep track of like Swamp Thing, right?
Oh, the ones that like rip the old Bigfoot footage.
It's like
those
a reference
good, yeah.
to like not Godzilla. I was about to say Godzilla. Bigfoot. The ones that represent Bigfoot, those were pretty cool. but then they just use it over and over again, and then it just got old.
Yeah, I mean, it really just kind of looks like a student film or a fan film. It's just, and I know it's like pretty cheap budget, like $2.5 million budget, I believe, 2.5 to 3 million, but it's not appealing to look at any point. Really, except for maybe the Bigfoot shots that Matt mentioned. Let me get to another paragraph, and then I want to definitely talk about the editing, but I want to kind of keep moving around this plot so we can fucking get through this. So Alice and Jude boat around the swamp until they reach the dock near the laboratory wreckage. Multiple boats of Arcane's men close in on Alice and Jude, luring the creature from its hiding place among the reeds. Despite their bullets and grenades, Swamp Thing engineers an elaborate boat crash where it's fleeting, but for a brief second, Swamp Thing drives a boat. And that is one of the few instances of camp that was actually kind of fun and entertaining, and it lasts about a second.
And then he jumps off the boat.
But it was when that place during that fight scene that I was like, wow, it's so open. Like it's supposed to be like a scene where like Swamp Thing, like, you don't know where he is, right? Oh, he can hide here, he can hide there. This is like the most wide open swamp you'll ever see. There's not even like grass in the water. It's like it's basically just a bunch of shallow water that you can stand in. In fact, I need to get back to the when they were drowning, the love interest scene. Like they were like trying to, remember he was like, Discount Rambo was trying to drown her, and then like I think me and you were talking about, I think they can stand in that water. And then it was confirmed later when Swamp Thing came out and dragged Discount Rambo to the water. And then like you see like every Swamp Thing carrying the love interest away, and he's not even like paddling, he's standing in it. So I'm just thinking to myself, she almost drowned in that.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. They play it really fast and loose with how deep the water is, but it is always visibly shallow. So engineers the boat crash. Moments after instructing Jude to escape with Alex's notebook, Alice hears the boy cry out in distress, but she's kidnapped before she can reply. The Swamp Thing finds Jude's lifeless body and presses his hand against his head, creating a greenish glow, which instantly revives him, regaining consciousness, and way too unshook by what he's seeing. Jude realizes the creature is a friend of Alice's and gives it the notebook for safekeeping. On Arcane's boat, Alice throws her kidnapper, Ferret, great name, that is Discount Rambo, to be clear, overboard, then dives into the water and swims ashore. Once on land, Alice bumps into Swamp Thing, which calls out her name. Ferret chops off Swamp Thing's arm with the machete, but the creature grabs Ferret's neck and squeezes his head till he dies, causing Alice to faint. She awakens in the monster's embrace. The Swamp Thing speaks to her, and she recognizes it as Alec. Arcane's men follow her, capture the Swamp Thing in a net, and retrieve the final notebook. That is the one decent bit of action, I think, what the fight with Ferret and Swamp Thing, where Swamp Thing's arm is cut off, and Alice faints while he like murders Ferret, which could have been R-rated, so we could have had his like head blow up as he squeezes it, but it just would have fit better. But you know, it is what it is. It's decent. But anyway, Sean mentioned earlier editing in this movie, and I kind of want you to kind of lead us into that conversation, because that's worth talking about.
But the editing, oh my god, the amount of fucking cuts towards the end, on top of like the types of cuts, where it's like, at one point it's like a fucking like, they took like they have a straight up star wipe, and then they have like the little POW, like the box that you use for like the generic like typical thing that you'd like expect from a comic book of the 80s, where it's like the big POW kind of like outline, and they use that as like a fade into the next scene, on top of like a bunch of other like slide cuts and all that stuff, and it's fucking weird. It just doesn't look
They
good.
like used the screen wipes to like transition to like the same thing happening still, and I'm like, why are you like, just cut to the other camera angle? You don't need to have this weird ugly screen transition to just show us the same thing.
They were excessive and ugly. I think in a little bit of defense of Richard Bracken, who did the editing, I think he was really probably struggling with what he had to work with into making the film interesting in an edit that is just not possible. There is a couple. The one of note that we all loved is Arcane is back at his mansion, kind of talking about the Swamp Thing and wanting them to cut it down, and immediately says, like, you know, he doesn't exactly keep a low profile, and then there is a hard cut to Swamp Thing in the distance in the swamp just screaming like off, and he's we all
Like,
died.
it's just such a good scream. It's not too overdone, but it's still just, like, loud and, like, unnecessary.
I think it's a really well done
He doesn't
cry.
keep a low profile. It's so crazy. It is the greatest comedic timing I've ever seen in a movie. It was hilarious.
This movie is just full of just, I don't think, intentional funny cuts.
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you, when I watched this the first time, I watched it by myself, and it was miserable. The only reason this was tolerable is like watching it with friends and getting to kind of like look at each other like, you seeing this shit? This is bad, right? Which kind of goes with most bad movies, they're always better with company. But it's just, I mean, this one's rough. I really find very little entertaining and redeeming value in it. There's a few moments here and there that are kind of funny to laugh at, but it's really, I don't think it's so bad it's good in any way. I don't think it's so bad it's funny, and I don't think there's anything, like, I wasn't crazy about Superman in the moment, but I think there's something, like, kind of interesting about seeing a Superman movie from the 50s and what that means and what that looks like, and the creation of that. There's none of that here. It's just not interesting. So that evening, Arcane invites Alice to a formal dinner party celebrating his duplication of Holland's formula. Moments after giving a toast to... It says invites... She's tied to a chair. Moments after giving... You know what? Actually, pause. Because then there's strippers at this dinner party. And I'll say this. I think the nudity in this movie, which is just... the only nudity in it is, like, some shots of boobs. Which is not a big deal, but it feels weirdly out of place with a movie that is generally pretty, like, kid-friendly, except for there's a little bit of blood here and there, and then, like the moment where Alice bathes in the swamp, which doesn't make a ton of sense, doesn't seem very clean, but I guess it's your only option, and, like, Alex/Swamp Thing kind of stares at her longingly in this, like, idea of, like, he's, you know, still feels like some humanity in him, but he's not really human anymore, and there's like this distance, and that's all well and good, but that's like, doesn't fit with the rest of the movie at all. It's so only in that moment, and then you get to like the dinner party where there's strippers, and I just want to say that like, it really clashes with the rest of the movie. As much as I agree with, it shouldn't be a big deal, and it's weird that especially American society demonizes nudity and sex more than violence, but that said, it does really feel like it clashes with this movie, in my opinion. It just is like kind of like, oh, there's strippers now? Oh, Swamp Thing's horny?
Well, I feel like the scenes of like the nudity anyways, it's fine when it's nudity and there isn't a sexual undertone to it, but in every single case there was a sexual undertone to it, and that, like, you know, Swamp Thing's looking at the Cable longingly because he's like, I want to be horny, but I can't.
And it doesn't help that their relationship is not developed at all. There's not even an attempt to, and the actors have no chemistry.
Yeah, and then the other one is the strippers, and it's like, okay, so this is just weirdly unneeded. Unnecessary, I should say.
It's like a hella fancy dinner party, and then also there's
What
like
is not
random
fancy
strippers.
about strippers? Tell me.
It's just, they didn't seem to have the same vibe going.
You haven't been to enough fancy dinner parties.
I think it seemed stuffy, and then there was strippers.
It's
don't
not.
need a
It's
stuffy
not a
thing.
dinner party if there's not some strippers, and you feed them too. They're part of the crew, of course.
Well, of course, fair enough.
And tip
Well,
well.
I mean, yes, of
support
course,
sex.
of course.
And tip well.
I
Of course,
agree.
sex work is real work.
Prostitution should be legal.
That is the legalized prostitution. Sex work is real work. There's absolutely no shame in it. That is the official stance of this podcast. Fuck off if you disagree. We have one listener, maybe. So goddamn, if we're lucky, we have one listener. So I sure as fuck hope they.
Because then we got none. Because we just told that one person to
whatever.
fuck off.
We're doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for a good time. I don't really care. Back to the plot. So after giving the toast to perspective and mortality, Arcane reveals that he secretly slipped the first toast to Bruno, who looks like discount Bruce Willis, who then begins to convulse in what is the movie's one of like only a couple decent actual like horror sort of moments in the movie. The hulking man's body shrinks to half its size as he grows pointed ears and a misshapen skull. Kind of looks like the Mole Men. So he grows pointed ears and a misshapen skull. Arcane locks him in the dungeon alongside Swamp Thing. who, by the way, this whole time is still missing his arm, and it's like a goofy amount of time, and it makes sense, but it's just kind of funny because when he like runs and has this little stub, it's just very silly.
He also has to like reach for the light so that he can regrow his arm, but he was already out in the daylight to begin with. So like, why are you doing it now?
Concentrated. He didn't know he could. I don't know. He learned to photosynthesize. I don't know.
The thing is that he reaches for the light, but then when it cuts to his face, there's a ray of sunshine on his face. So I don't understand that.
It wasn't as bright as the other light, but it was still like there is light on your face.
Because listen, this movie's cheap and it's not well thought out. And again, a lot of these things, like, I wouldn't give a shit about that if the rest of the movie was good, because that's not the point. The point is him like learning to, is like the moment of his regrowth and everything, but it's not done well. So all of the little things like the inconsistency if he was outside for an extended period of time in the sun already, why is that little bit regrowing him, becomes an issue because you linger on it because the thematic and emotional resonance is not there because nothing's developed in the whole film.
The tiny hand was pretty funny though.
Tiny hand was funny.
Tiny hand's good.
The tiny hand when it just curled up into a little fist.
Arcane interrogates Swamp Thing as to why the experiment failed, and Swamp Thing reveals that the formula does not produce strength, but instead amplifies a person's natural qualities, explaining that Bruno's timid nature, let's say, causes diminished stature. Alright, cruising through the finale. I'm gonna rip through the finale real quick. After locking Alice in a dungeon with him, Arcane returns to his study and drinks a glass of the formula. A beam of sunlight emitted through the door regrows Swamp Thing's missing arm, like Sean had said, allowing the creature to free itself, Alice, and Bruno. Now he decides, you know, even though Bruno was bad until he turned small, apparently we're cool with Bruno. Upstairs, Arcane transforms into a hairy boar-like beast. Another one of the few good moments is like when his secretary walks in and you only see half of him that looks normal, and then she looks shocked, and then the transition into him transforming, and while the end result of the boar-like beast is really, really goofy looking, especially in the eyes, as a whole the transition is actually some solid body horror on a budget and is like pretty well shot, especially the scene of him in the chair.
One of few good things about this movie was that.
Exactly. It's few and far between. He descends to the dungeon where he discovers that his captives have escaped through an underwater tunnel leading to the swamp with the help of Bruno. Sometime later, Alice and the Swamp Thing emerge from water, which now all of a sudden there's like fog in the swamp, and there's not nearly enough of it. It's really low, but it's foggy and bubbling, and this is the first time the swamps looked even a little bit interesting the whole damn movie. And while it's not dark exactly, it's not totally sunshiny bright out, I guess. So that's sort of an improvement. Too little, too late. So they lead back to the swamp, follow close to the bear Arcane, who stabs Alice with the sword. Swamp Thing revives Alice and kills Arcane. The creature turns to leave, looking back at the sword. Again, one of the few decent, kind of cool moments, even though the fight really sucked. He turns to leave, and Alice pleads for him to stay so they can rebuild his work. He refuses, but promises to return to her soon. Moments later, Jude emerges from the trees and embraces her as they watch Swamp Thing lumber away from the marsh. Thoughts on the ending?
Well, first and foremost, I want to real quick say, you said that Bruno looked like discount Bruce Willis. He looked like Bruce Thickus.
Credit to Matt for saying that, but yeah, Bruce Thickus is good.
Bruce Willis ate discount Bruce Willis. I'm not body shaming. I'm just saying that that's what it looked like. I'm painting an accurate picture. He looked like Bruce Willis with another Bruce Willis's weight on him. Like that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm body positivity, all that. I'm for it.
I mean,
I'm just saying.
He was very jolly though.
He was. Listen, I'm not saying anything wrong about him. Just saying he was a little thicky.
Here's the thing. This movie could almost be... It wouldn't be redeemable because it was so bad. But if the fight between Arcane and his monster form, even as goofy as that suit was, and Swamp Thing, and Arcane's got this like sword, and Swamp Thing's got like a club that he ripped from the ground, if that had been good, it would have made like some kind of memorable impression. This movie's so forgettable, but it's not good.
Oh no, I was expecting like, granted I wasn't expecting much at all actually, but when you have like two guys in suits getting ready to fight each other, you expect like kaiju level action. They're gonna fucking go hands with each other and fuck each other up, but instead they're like trying to smack each other.
Well, that's the
with
thing though, it's just like
sticks, and it really isn't working.
About what you said, Jason, is that's true about like kaiju stuff or like Super Sentai stuff.
Yeah,
it's
but
like there are two people in rubber suits who fight each other, but like the difference is that There's like more exciting camera angles. They try to angle it
Yeah.
so that they're gigantic. And choreography, yes.
Choreography. Sets, in the case of kaiju movies, like old school Godzilla movies, you have really cool practical sets.
Exactly. There's a lot of buildings around that get destroyed. There's like practical explosions on the suit itself.
It looked like a home video of two kids who were trying to like recreate Godzilla. Like they were just like playing in their front yard, and like that's what it felt like. It had the vibe of like, yeah, they're just swinging things at each other to fight each other, and that's what kaiju shit is. But it had none of the fun and theatrics.
That is the best way to possibly describe it. It feels exactly like kids trying to recreate it. We all like simultaneously had the same, like, this feels like an old Godzilla movie or Super Sentai or Power Rangers with the suits and the fighting and everything, but without any of the fun, the flair, the style. Matt said camera angles,
the
choreography, just general quality is just completely
The thing is that
missing.
there are times where, I thought it was going to get exciting, like when our king killed Alice, and then something got really mad, and so he's like rocking the giant stump back and forth, and he pulls it out. I'm like, okay, maybe it's going to get exciting. And then like the shot where he swings at Arcane seems pretty cool, but then like the actual hit itself was such a letdown because it looked so light and it bounced off as if it was a rubber suit. Also, can you talk about Arcane's rubber suit real quick? Like it's just like a first iteration of a furry suit. Like, it's so bad, and like it's such a disappointment. Like, I don't know why I had expectations at all, but like when Arcane was first transforming into his furry form, like it was pretty
Into
cool.
his persona?
Like, yeah, into his persona. His transformation was actually pretty cool. Like, you don't really see the transformation at first. You see like one of his waitresses bringing in a drink, and then like dropping the drink in fright because of how he looked. And the actual like transformation himself, like they show like his fingers expanding. Like they show what else they show? They show like him turning into like a flesh blob. And so I was just like, okay, like, what is he transforming into? And then it just turns out to be just a furry. And so it's like, what the fuck is this?
Turns out to be a furry. How my disappointment is immense and
You
my day
build
is
all
ruined.
that up. Like, I wish he stayed into. Remember, like mid transformation, it looked like half of his face was melting. I wish he just stayed like that.
Well, I liked that transformation effect, like the little cocoon that he essentially got over his entire body. I think that looked, showing that and like it growing on him was fairly grotesque, and then when it was finished he just looked like a trash bag, and I thought that was what we were gonna end up with. That was the end result, was that he turned into a fucking trash bag, and I was like, oh, that's fucking terrible. And then we got the fucking pig, and it was like, what the fuck?
I was right on that same wavelength the whole time. I was like, this looks really cool. Oh, that looks like shit. And then he took it all off. I was like, oh, that looks like more shit.
It's just kind of weird because, again, when the Swamp Thing suit is decent, when the transition scene is decent for him, when the transition scene for Bruno and the aftermath of Bruno are pretty solid looking, and then the ultimate final form of Arcane is just so goofy, and again, not in a way that like works at all, because this movie is not effective in its camp prior. It just looks cheap and stupid and silly. It's just disappointing, even as low as your expectations are.
I'm also super confused by the formula still, because like, granted, they didn't give us much, so it's not like I have anything to complain about really with it, like, oh, this is terrible. But like, it is just a plot device, but it was like, it's supposed to turn you into like more of what you are, which is what they say. And so like, but like when it lands on anything, it just created plants in the beginning. And so like what I expected was anybody else who it lands on will also turn kind of plant-based, but more like, more in line with like, what they are at heart. So like you saw, what's his face? Bruce Thickus. He gets smaller, and he like, and he like gets a little bit more grody looking. And then you have like the fucking, I don't understand why he turns into a fucking pig. I get the idea of like he's the villain and he's a pig, so he turns into a pig. But like, I could get a little bit of plant vibes from Bruce Thickus, but I did not get any plant vibes from like the fucking pig, because it's just like a pig with scales and he's got hair on his back and his head
And lifeless
like, okay.
eyes.
Let's talk about those dead fish eyes for a second. Like, it's awful. The suit, it wasn't even like a complete persona. Like it's like the head to like the chest area was like a wolf, and then the rest was like some kind of like reptilian creature. I don't know. I thought I saw scales, but maybe I'm wrong because the suit was so bad. But what brought it all together were those eyes. They are so dead and so just like it feels like it sucks the life out of you just by staring at them. And it hurt to look at the suit. Like, it just seems like a student project, a student movie project. But the thing is that that's a diss on student movie projects, because they can probably make something better and more lifelike than what they made with what was it, $3 million, $2.5-3 million. Just for some context, that's $7 million in today's money. So, if you are listening to this, first of all, thank you. But second of all, if you make movies, you can probably make a better movie than this. And just think for a second. If you think that your dream of becoming a movie maker is impossible, people made this movie.
Not only did they make this movie, but then Wes Craven took off a legendary horror career. Absolutely.
Granted, I don't want to shit on the movie that much because it's actual people who put their lives into this movie. So it's like, and it's more than I could ever do, but it's also like, you have to start somewhere. So at the very least, you can see like, I'm going to give this movie some credit. You can see that there's definitely talent in like the practical effects, and that like some of them are really fucking good. Some of them are really fucking stupid, but most of them are actually fairly decent. And given that like, even if it's $7 million today, that is still a shoestring budget for what they're trying to work with, which is like still like, I remember, I mean, like Swamp Thing, again, we don't know for sure why it got canceled, but like one of the bigger rumors that went around was that like, it was too expensive. So like, to see like something like that done well and understand that like getting it done right is probably expensive, I can understand how things ended up the way they were for this. Granted, I can't give it all of the credit where credit is due, because just it doesn't fails to do things. But like, I think it's like it's a good experience to see like, how Wes Craven kind of like started off a little bit. Like, this is his fourth movie, one of those. So it's like kind of seeing the beginning of him, and it's like not too far after The Hills Have Eyes and directly before he gets to Nightmare on Elm Street, which is like in between some like weird, really good movies. So it's like you get to see like, he wasn't perfect when it came to like making films. He had some slip ups just like any other person is, because they're human. So it's kind of like, it's just, and plus it's like I wouldn't say it's the failing of the director himself, but a lot of parts of that movie just did not come together the way that they...
He also did write it.
Well, yeah, there's that too. I can't give him credit for that either. But like, it's kind of just like the you see the parts of it that just didn't meld well together. So like the editing is one thing that is an ungodly abomination of editing. You have like, the writing was terrible. Did he screenwrite it too? I don't know.
It says the credit is written and directed by.
I would assume he wrote the screenplay as well, which is like, so like they could have done better with that. But like, again, it's like, it's just, I think what I take out of this is that it's neat to see like kind of more of the beginning, not the beginnings, but like the initial side of like Wes Craven's first couple of movies, and to see like how he started rather than like looking at like his best films, which is what people tend to look at when you're looking at Wes Craven's filmography to begin with.
I think that positivity is a good note to kind of put a bow on things on, in that I agree with you. It's like every movie, almost by nature of existing in such a collaborative, difficult, complicated nature, like art form, is like in and of itself a miracle, even if it's not particularly good. But I think that's a sort of good note to end on. So if nobody minds, and kind of just, our usual around the room, I want to, my favorite thing. if I had to pick something I'm really not into this movie, it's probably the Swamp Thing suit. I think it's a solid suit, all things considered. And also, Dick DeRock, it's not necessarily a performance to write home about, but especially in the body acting, I think he does a pretty good job. And I can't imagine it's easy. This film was shot in South Carolina. I'm guessing one of the reasons the settings aren't great is because they probably had limited options. But I can't imagine walking around in South Carolina in the woods in that suit and trying to put on a performance is easy. It's got to be hot and sweaty and uncomfortable. So, if I got to pick something, I'm picking him in the suit. Least favorite thing, as I just mentioned, it's got to be the setting. There's a lot of issues with this, but to me, like, the number one thing is you have a Swamp Thing movie and you just have a completely uninteresting, unscary, unintimidating, unimposing, unencumbered swamp in broad daylight for the whole movie, and it's just ugly to look at, and it hurts every other aspect of the movie. I definitely wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. Also want to credit Stephen Bissett and John Toddleman as his main collaborators. Other artists and inkers jumped in throughout and editors, but definitely want to give those two credit as his main collaborators on his Saga of the Swamp Thing run. I haven't read it myself, and I don't know any of the other artists, other creators involved, but I've heard nothing but good things about Scott Snyder, Charles Soule, and Ram V's Swamp Thing runs. Gonna check those out myself. I'd strongly recommend them off of what I've heard. And from Wes Craven, dude's a legend. Watch any of the Scream movies. Watch The People Under the Stairs, The Hills Have Eyes, Nightmare on Elm Street, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So much of his filmography, but just don't watch this. What about you guys? Favorite thing, least favorite thing, recommend? I think we all don't recommend.
Yeah, my favorite thing was probably just, I don't know.
Nothing.
Nothing at all. Yeah. I think the best thing for me was probably just like, and it ended up being ruined by like the suit looking so bad, but like watching the transition of Arcane turning into what ended up just being a weird persona. But it looked cool throughout it, and like you mentioned earlier, like it was a cool shot how like the woman brought him his drink, he looked normal to the camera, but then she reacted and then you saw what was happening to him. My least favorite thing specifically was probably like the finale, like that final fight scene, because it's just so bleh and underwhelming.
I'm surprised Jude/Reggie wasn't your favorite.
Jude was also, shout out Jude, he's looking like a 12-year-old running an entire, yeah, he was like 12 years old running a whole
shout out Reggie
gas
Bass
station by himself, and he was just that guy. I mean, he made the Coke machine work by punching
We never
it.
talked about that, how he looks like a 12-year-old and he's running a fucking gas station in the middle of the fucking swamp.
He's a kid. He looks no older than 12, 13, and he's running this gas station. I thought maybe when they went inside there'd be more people. No, just him. And he's just like by himself in this swamp running a gas station, which seemingly has no gas pumps, but they call it a gas station. So, I don't know what that's about. And another one of my favorite things is just him saying, kicking the Coke machine doesn't make it work, you gotta punch it. And then he punches it and it works when Cable's at the gas station. Yeah, the final fight scene was just so underwhelming and so meh. So that just disappointed.
And I take it, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you don't recommend?
Not in the least bit. Like you said, People Under the Stairs is one of my favorite movies. That's also by Wes Craven. If you hate capitalists, you hate Ronald Reagan, like I do, I definitely recommend that instead of this. And again, like you said, the Scream movies, love those. Love Sidney Prescott.
I'm gonna say I don't recommend this movie. I'm gonna start out with what I didn't like first, because if I took anything out of this movie, it's that I want to visit South Carolina now. I now want to visit that place because they look like they have very nice swamps, and they seem to be very pleasant canoeing spots. So that's what I want to do. But the thing I like is Arcane's transformation. I think that was a very, very good. What should I say? Oh yeah, it had very good effects. It had very good shots too. It's like one of the few scenes that actually had horror elements to it. And I also liked the fact that Arcane's actor played in a 007 movie called Kamal Khan, and this 007 movie is called Octopussy.
And I'm supposed to follow that one up. I'm going to take something out of Matt's book and go with the negatives first and get to the positives. So yeah, I don't recommend it. My least favorite part that is hard. I want to give it to the editing and the writing because nothing comes together in that entire movie. Favorite is the fucking one cut where it's like, where he's fucking like, well, he's not very subtle. And he's fucking sitting out there in the middle of the swamp, T-posing and screaming. That and I'll give it credit where credit's due in that like a good amount of the body horror portions of the film do actually work fairly well for what they're trying to go for, and yeah, that's about it.
Well, honestly, I'm surprised we had as much to say and that this went as long as it did, because wow, that's an unmemorable movie that I'm gonna forget almost instantly in its entirety. So I just want to say thank you to Loren for our artwork, AYELOWREN on Twitter. You can follow me on Letterboxd for bad movie takes, Jake Walter 98, no underscores, no spaces, capital J, capital W. Jason, plug your music.
Yeah, man, you could follow me on Twitter at the upside. I think it's
You did this last time.
the underscore upsides PA. It might be the upsides underscore PA.
Oh my
I
god,
don't remember.
Some
you
variation
forgot
of
that.
There's an underscore either after the or after upsides.
You know, you could just open
Let
Twitter.
me check real quick. All right, let's bear with me. Bear with me.
Bear with me here. I gotta go.
Well, I made it a while ago. Oh, okay. So it's the underscore upsides PA. You can follow me there. I make music.
Including our intro outro music.
I made the intro outro music. I make hyperpop twink music because I'm a little queer boy. And it's from a song called Pins and Needles. If I ever fucking finish it.
How many episodes are we gonna go through where you haven't finished it?
This is episode 5, not counting the intro episode that we are recording without it having been fully finished as a song.
Perfect, beautiful, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, listen, because I keep rewriting the verse and then I have to like layer the vocals. It's a whole thing. So anyway, Pins and Needles. I'm working on making a whole EP of like 5 songs. I'm thinking of calling it Cult Classic. That's the first time I've said anything about that. So maybe I'll do that. Who fucking knows? But yeah, my SoundCloud is the upsides.
If you are interested in continuing to check us out, you can follow the podcast at illiterate_pod. That's definitely where the underscore goes on both Twitter and Instagram. You can reach us at culturalilliteratepod@gmail.com for any questions or comments. To email us, please leave reviews. They're probably not going to be good, but please leave them. It's still fucking contributive, I guess.
Please relieve them. They're still contributive, I guess.
Shut up! I couldn't think of words. All episodes are on YouTube as well, which is Culture Illiterate Podcast is the channel name on YouTube. We're still doing bi-weekly episodes for now. Next episode, we are checking out Superman 3, so if you're watching along, that's what you should watch if you hate yourself. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again next time.